How
How
you
you
doing?
doing? Good, and you?
Yeah, yeah, good. Busy, busy, up to no good. But
Hey,
as you
man.
can see, I'm in transit here. I'm talking to you from my car.
Well,
So committed I am
it's
to these
it's
systems.
exciting that you have a lot of things in your plate right now, man. You're a really busy developer.
Oh, sorry, I'm laughing. It's making my computer uh, bounce because it's like as my old boss used to say, this is very much self-inflicted. But setting goals that are unrealistic is the way I get some things done sometimes. So, but I'm looking forward to today's chat.
I mean, it's the reality. Like I myself also can rather prefer to be extremely busy than just being extremely relaxed because I don't have enough projects. So don't worry, I get what you're saying.
All
Um,
right.
and also the fact that today I maybe I'm pessimistic, but I think that we need to take advantage of being software developers while there is software development work until AI take our jobs.
Okay, well, if we have time, we'll talk about why I don't think that's very likely, but we can continue on. But actually, we'll try to thread that into the conversation today. So I
Absolutely,
thought it was a very interesting topic you chose.
yeah. Like I mean, we can start from the beginning. Like I'm an architect. What do you think is the first thing? Like I want to become a software developer, right? I'm an architect and I wanna code because I love it or because I wanna create my own product and have my own startup for whatever reason. What do you think, Chris, is the first thing I need to learn? I don't know. I know nothing about coding. Nothing.
See, I think it depends on whether you're committing to becoming a professional or you're just learning out of interest and you want to do some experimentation. And both are valid approaches, but I do think they're different. I think it's like we have this mistake and this fallacy. I think that you can become a professional software developer, by just casually playing around. And sure, you can get things done, but you're not what I give you a comparison. Could you just casually become an architect? Just be like, I did a little building of stuff. I built a tree
Maybe.
house and I built a cabano in my backyard. So, am I en route to becoming an architect? No. I mean, I think it's a serious, methodical approach to becoming a professional software developer. So that question, then you're saying, well, what do you first need to learn? And I think you need to first learn and understand what programming is. What is the action that's happening? Like you're converting from source code into intermediate code into an assembly code. So you need to understand this pipeline of how computers are understanding the instructions you're giving them. And I think that's the first place to start. And I think if you don't fundamentally understand that, you're probably more on the amateur hobby side. What are your thoughts about what I'm saying? Is it
Oh,
controversial or?
no. I think it's a really valid point. Like anything in life, right? Like it's not the same. Like being I don't know, a go to play I don't know volleyball with my friends or trying to be a professional volleyball player. It's not the same.
Yeah,
In one I cannot not even follow the rules, and then the other one I need to be serious, very serious about it. Um, but so I completely agree with you. But maybe I think we can focus more on the professional side
yeah,
because
perfect.
like the the not professional side, I mean you can do whatever you want, you can as long as you're having fun or experimenting. It's there's no need to learn something really specific, but let's focus on I want to become a professional software developer. I want to get real job at I don't know, um, Amazon or any other big
Yeah,
company.
yeah.
What do you suggest is the first thing someone who comes from the AC needs to learn to become a software developer? AC
Yeah,
software developer. Let's
and
put
I
it like
think
that.
that you have to understand. what compilation is, and how scripting engines work. You want to demystify this idea that you type in code, you press a button and then magic happens. Like, you want to understand that pipeline, and if you don't understand that pipeline, you're going to be kind of stabbing in the dark, I think. So, and you have to understand that there's different models. Like, there's how is JavaScript understood or interpreted and executed? How is C++ executed? How is a language like C sharp? And these are three fundamentally different models of compilation, or transforming code into executable instructions that the computer understands. And I think the other part of it too that's really fundamental is to understand how your computer basically works, what we call a von Neumann architecture. The idea that there's heap memory, and there's a stack, and there's an instruction code. You need to understand these things at the very fundamental levels. um, and so, be prepared for some study, and ask yourself, if you don't understand these things, take the time to learn them. I'm not saying, by the way, that you can't be self-taught and be a professional developer. You totally can. It's just that you should try the best to do things in order as much as possible, and to formally understand it, and you can come back to it. You may actually have a job as a developer, and you go, you know what, I don't deeply understand how compilation works, and I don't understand what bytecode is. These are things that you absolutely must understand, because if you don't know what the
Yeah.
computer's doing under the hood, then you're kind of guessing, and it leads to code that makes some really weird assumptions. But that's my thinking. No, that's me. What about you on your side? What do you think of what I propose, and what are your fundamental first things that you would recommend somebody to start off with?
No, I think you brought a really valid point. Like, in for me, when I started learning how to code a long time ago, I didn't understand the basics at first,
Yeah.
and I did it in the wrong way. I was like really really young. I was like, I don't know, 14 years old or something like that, and 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 for me, it was painful because when I started learning how to code without the basic knowledge of what single thread is, multi-thread is, how a processor works, what RAM memory is, and how to storage memory, or how to efficiently use memory, and then how to efficiently use I don't know, the disk, or so many parts of the computer. It was painful because I was a crappy coder, right? Like, I was limited. So I agree that at first you need to learn certain basics about what all programming languages have in common. But then for me, after there, I don't even think that the first thing you need to learn is a programming language. For me, it is just about learning of the industry in general. Like, what's the difference between front end and back end, without the need to learn an actual programming language. What's a DevOps does, and like,
Yeah.
understand the industry in general before learning a language, because you might not like doing back end, or you might not like doing front end, and that's
Mm.
my thinking of a second step after the basics.
That's a good point. Well, it's interesting that you said you learned it the wrong way. And so did I. I mean, I learned when I was very young, I was just typing in code that I found in books. Just typing them into, like, this is back in the 80s. I was typing code that I found in various books and into the computer. And then I started modifying them, and I started developing an interest and a love. I actually think sometimes it's healthy to start wrong. As a non-professional, as a person who's wanting to develop interest in it as a hobby, to see what can you do with code? Is coding something that's interesting to you? Similar to what you're saying about first understanding whether or not you want to learn it. And it's true that you don't really need to learn a programming language, because when I talk about the fundamentals, you mentioned memory, I was talking about compilation models. Those are things that you can teach and learn without actually programming as such. And in fact, I think a good computer science education professional doesn't start with the actual coding. I think there's two branches. Like, there's the art of coding, software craftsmanship, and then there's also understanding how computers work, and how to manage them. So, like, I found that developing a mental model of how computers work. So I took, like, for example, I took a C in assembly class, and I never wrote a single line of C or
Assembly.
assembly. And I, I got an A in it because I took the time to understand the concept of how it works. Like, and it was super useful, and it applies to everything. But it's study. It's not something that you are just going to you have to pick it up because you're motivated to actually dive in and do the study. But you have to develop that motivation in the first place. And I think sometimes coding as a hobby, or experimenting, saying, "Oh yeah, this is kind of neat. I would really like to go and become, a high-paid professional developer at a really high-end company." So
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, but I think it's really important to also know or understand what you're trying to do. It's not the same
yeah.
as, hey, I'm just gonna be a front end developer, and what I love to do is just doing websites, and it's a valid thing. Or hey, I just want to create. I just love to do games, right? My passion is doing games, and I want to learn how to code for doing games. For
That's
for
that's
me,
interesting.
well, for me, it's about what you want to do and then start. It's like, and also the fact that it's not the same of, hey, I'm an entrepreneur and I want to create my own product and sell it to other people, and
Oh yeah.
you might need to learn a lot of things compared to, you know what, I just want to do it because, like I told you, I want to create games and that's my passion, or I want to create viewers to upload beam models in the cloud, and I love 3D, and I don't know. For me, it's about
Well,
purpose. I don't know.
yeah. And those are separate purposes. Being an entrepreneur, doing something to augment your other job. This is not about following the track of being a software developer and really learning the things in order to be taken seriously, let's say at a high end software development
I mean,
shop.
for me, it
So
is because how you're going to decide which programming language you're going to learn. Well, for
no,
you,
no.
how
If
you.
you okay, that's something. If you only go into one language, or if you over identify yourself as being, well, I'm a front end developer or whatever, or I just do games, you're it's I don't know. For me, it's hard for me to take it seriously, because those people tend to overly uh, figure themselves out in one place like that. They tend not to have done like a really deep education. The learning multiple languages and multiple aspects of programming, I think, is key to being a professional software developer. Otherwise, you're limiting yourself really severely.
No, I mean, yes, but you need to start somewhere.
No,
Like,
but I mean, if you spend 4 years in school, come out and say, "Oh, all I can do is JavaScript programming," well, that wasn't a very good school. Similarly, if all you can do is develop games, and you're really, really having too narrow of an education. And I think what we're seeing is a lot of people without formal education, uh, and are very, very limited, and overly limiting themselves, I'm thinking. But anyway, back to you. You're
yeah, yeah.
disagreeing with me on this, which is
No,
fine.
we're disagreeing. It's fine. Like you have like more like a formal um, way of thinking, and it's perfect. And I'm more of a. That's why I'm a crappy developer. That's the reason why.
Uh,
Uh, there is a there is a comment of Pedro in the chat. He's like, "Hey guys, what about AI agents applied in AC? Are you guys using them somehow?" Um, you gonna go first, Chris?
I'm only using, this is really interesting. So I've been developing software for 30 years, and I'm using ChatGPT extensively, pro version, to review my code and to discuss design decisions. Usually at a high level. Sometimes write some of the lower level math algorithms as an initial pass. Haven't used AI agents at all. I'm thinking of developing some to help me kind of like automate the process of code reviews, unit test writing, and whatnot. But it's like, as developers, we sometimes look at our processes and we want to automate everything we do. Yeah, that's it on my side. I find it incredibly useful. It's like a pair programmer who's very, very patient with me and answers any questions I may have. And I take it all at face value, and it's a useful tool. You?
No, absolutely, it is. I mean, we at Evers we're using. Everybody has a license of Cursor, and most of the code we do it's on Cursor using Claude. Um, We also use CodeRabbit to basically every time we send a PR request into GitHub, it automatically checks our code. And we customize it CodeRabbit to check whatever we want. And we also have a couple of AI agents to generate boilerplates for our projects. Like when we have to start a Rabbit add-in, we use it. Or when we want to check or test some things, we use it. But the thing is, like, it's amazing. It's amazing. There are certain limitations, like I don't know, Cursor, for example. You can always say that never add quotes or comments, and it will add comments anyway. And I hate it because then I have to remove those comments. But in reality, we're using it so much, and at least for us internally, I don't know, we're 10 times more efficient than we were like 5 years ago. It's just insane. Um, do you think AI, Chris, is, if someone is starting to code nowadays,
Hmm.
given the fact that we have AI, is going to change the path people need to take to be a AC software development nowadays?
I
Or
think it actually makes it more important than ever. I think it's more important to have a deep understanding of the fundamentals so that because you want to be able to understand why some of the choices are being made by the AI agents, and you also want to be able to correct them and to orchestrate them at a higher level. But you have to have a deep understanding of what it is you're doing so that you're not like overly leveraging or let's say using AI as a crutch. Again, I think I feel like the type of formal education I had, where my professors were all like, "We're not teaching you to program. We don't care what language you use. That is irrelevant. We're teaching you the fundamentals of computer science and a little bit of software engineering." And it was a bit well, bad at the time, but the computer science education I got was wild. It was awesome. And I think that's this kind of stuff that's really, really fundamental. I mean, coming back to it, it's like uh, gear up, get a plan for a good 4 years of hard study, and you can come out and you can be a very, very competent software developer. But you have to understand the problem with that type of education. You come out and you're not a very effective coder because that takes practice. Programming is a skill that you develop through time, and you get better and better at it. So you'd come out of that without necessarily an ability to pass some of the interview questions. Like being able to do leet code is completely different than having a formal computer science education.
no, absolutely, I agree with that. And at least for me, I think the best school was working with other devs. I mean, it's just insane how better you become when you get out of school and then you start working with other developers that have been working for 20 years, and then you just looking how they code is just like they're in a different level, or they just do things so differently to you that you learn so much. And then also, if you have a senior dev that is telling you, like, you made a mistake here, like you shouldn't be doing these kind of things, like that's also helps a lot, because they can lead you, not because of the code, but lead you on, what, you don't understand the basics here, you better go and learn more about it. So
Oh, and that's a really good point. So exposing yourself to senior developers, it's amazing. The code reviews is so important. It's important for yeah for learning and becoming a better developer. But one of the challenges is that as a team lead, I really didn't want to have people that didn't understand fundamentals show up and then start me having to educate them about stuff that I'm like, oh crap, you don't know this stuff. This is going to take you 3 to 5 years to learn. You have to go back to school, and so I'm going to have to fire you. I'm sorry.
yeah, or even worse, we have had, I'm not going to say clients, but people that we have worked with, that they're leading companies, and because they're leading in a startup, and they don't know what they're speaking about, and then they end up and they end up failing because the idea is great, but they think they can be a CTO or a CEO, but because they never had a formal education, or they never spent enough time to
Or
to to be exposed, they are leading a company in a really, really bad way. It's a
yeah,
shame.
or being actually being in a room surrounded by people who are so much better than you. Like for me, I had an
Mm.
early experience. My first open source submission was to a library called Boost. It's a pretty famous C++ library. A lot of the Boost libraries become part of the C++ standard library, and the level of quality of submissions was so high in the reviews. And boy, like I almost got laughed out of there after doing a submission because the quality was nowhere near. And I mean, having that experience is really key. Surrounding yourself by people who are not as experienced as you is, well, it's not really going to help you out much. And I notice that sometimes where people don't really hire, but success doesn't necessarily correlate to how good of a programmer you are or how much software engineering skills. On being an entrepreneur is a different
Yeah,
adventure.
yeah. No,
And
absolutely. And what Peter says about skin in the game is the most important thing. I mean, I agree, because the thing is, like, and going back to AI, a lot of people think that, at least nowadays, hopefully, I really do want AI to take my job. I would love AI to take my job and not to code ever again. To be honest, that's my way of thinking. But the reality is that nowadays, like, people think that you go into Cursor and you tell Cursor, like, you know what, create a whole app, and it will do it. But the thing is, like, if you don't understand what you're doing, it will eventually get to a point that it's going to break. You're not going to know how to fix it. And also the fact that Cursor is really good at creating a website or something that's really small. But when you have to do something really technical that nobody has ever done, like, for example, what you're doing, Chris, and creating a viewer that is the most efficient in the industry, and you're doing things that nobody has ever done, you cannot go to a blog and check how other people have done the same thing. Cursor will never do it.
no,
And it's a reality.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's like everything. You have to learn, be able to break it down into smaller parts and smaller problems that you can use the AI to solve. So you have to understand how to break down complex problems into smaller, simpler problems and how to build those bits. And then you can use AI to build those bits. And then you have to understand how to wire them together. But if you don't understand how to wire things together and how to do it cleanly, everything is just going to be chaos.
Yeah.
So let's I mean, we don't have a whole lot of time. I did want to kind of maybe run through some of the key things that I would
Yeah.
expect a professional software developer that I was hiring to know. So the way I'm going to like answer the question is say, look, I'm going to have to hire developers. For me to hire somebody as a developer, what are the things that I expect? And I expect proficiency in about three languages and the ability to pick up new ones. I do not care what framework you've used or whatever. You need to understand algorithmic complexity. You got to understand it deeply, like the back of your hand. You have to have quick problem solving skills. You have to be able to read code. You have to be able to write tests. One of the things that most professional software, like junior and experienced software developers, don't understand is how do you validate that your code works? And that's a question I ask everyone. I was like, use a little coding example. They solve it and they're like, oh, that was easy. I said, now validate that it works. And they get very confused. I'm like, well, that's where testing comes in. And how do you write the test? And I guide them down the path. But testing is a really key thing. And the other thing is to understand, the basics of binary numbers and binary arithmetic. This is kind of key. You got to be able to do some of that stuff almost in your head by the end of your training, right? And these are
You
things
should
that,
be able to chat in binary.
yeah. Now there's a school of thought that says, well, why can't I could just get ChatGPT to do it? I'm like, sure, you could. But the problem is that if you have to hunt for everything and you just don't have a basic ability to do it or a basic understanding, then you've got some big gaps in your education. So those are kind of warning signs for me. And then the last bit probably would be really memory, understanding memory. It's like everything's tied to memory management. All of the high performance code, it's all about how you use memory. And crappy code. If crappy code's not, if it's slow, like it's usually because of bad memory management. So understanding how all of that works. Um,
Um, yeah, no, absolutely. And just to add to the list you were saying, like, I do agree that the most important skills when coding is soft skills. like problem solving, logic, like the basics. Like it's not coding itself, because you can. I'd rather prefer someone who doesn't know in a specific language, but they're really good, really flexible, and have a great base, than someone who knows the language but might not be as flexible or might not be
Yeah.
creative. You need to be really creative to solve it in new way, the problems you have, and solve it in new ways. But just to add to a list, I feel that besides the basic soft skills, at least for my point of view, where we just create software that thousands of users will use, is architecture. Learn how, if you're going to create a product, no matter if it is just back end, front end, the whole thing, you need to understand architecture. It's just going to be a monolithic thing. It's going to be multiple parts, and it's
Yeah.
just the abstraction of understanding how you want to solve the problem. And then another thing that, at least for me, I think it's important and I'm passionate about is infrastructure. No matter what you're doing, you will have to deploy it somewhere. Even if it's desktop, it's an infrastructure. If it is cloud,
Yeah.
you have to host it somewhere. So you need to understand, at least, yeah, if you're just going to do desktop, it's fine, but you need to understand how Windows or Linux or iOS works to deploy it. So I'm just adding that
That's
to
a
you.
really good point. And I kind of was rolling my eyes a little bit because it's true. And I know that I overlook infrastructure because I fall into the theory game where I'm like, hey, I got really good big old complexity on my algorithm and it works. And I don't care how to run it. And that tends to be one of my weaknesses. But you're right. It's super important. Software architecture and software engineering, super, super important. But unfortunately, there seems to be no great way to learn it except through experience, trying to build lots of things and failing and figuring out why. But yeah, those are really, really good points. And those are things we look for.
There was a. I'm just putting a link on the screen, so when
Yeah.
everybody watches the recording, they can see this. But thanks, Cameron, for sharing this link on the people behind GitHub Copilot. Also, GitHub Copilot is another option when using AI that has improved so much, and we also use it. Because it's like it's tap tap tap, and then suddenly the code that you need appear, and you don't waste time. And it's
Yeah.
for stuff that you're creating, I don't know, an object or a JSON something, or that it's just feeling stuff that is just boring and there's no way to make a mistake. I mean, Copilot is great for so many things. So thanks for sharing that, Cameron. Um, and before we end up this, Chris, do you have any final remarks on any other skills that you think people from the AC, specifically for the AC, let's put it like
Okay.
that, and
Well, I think a good understanding of the technology choices that are out there. Obviously, no one person can do it all. And there is a huge amount of value for me in my organization to hire people who have that blend of skills, who are hybrid developers and AEC professionals experiences. So maybe I wouldn't consider them like a principal software engineer or something, but they are definitely playing an important role within an organization. So for them, at least understanding the key uh, data formats and advantages of what they are, but digging into it a little bit more. Like what I'm seeing a little bit is a gap in people understanding why certain technology choices and how they affect what's going on. So for example, people don't understand why is it so slow to load an IFC file in certain pieces of software? Why does Revit break when you try to export a single IFC file? What is going on under the hood? So you want to be a software developer in that space, trying to understand those things properly. And also soft skills. Check your assumptions. You do not know it all, no matter how much experience you have. There is something to be learned from everyone, and be careful about your assumptions. I mean, you got to test. Computers are always surprisingly, they should be simple, but there's always levels of complexity going on. So test, 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 listen, 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 be open-minded and validate your assumptions. I mean, I'll tell you, one of the biggest problems I have with software developers is actually personality. So, coming to soft skills, you need to be open-minded and listen. and collaborative with others. And that's really one of the most important things of all, I think, regardless of industry.
Yeah.
What about you? What's your final word for people coming into to AEC
No,
software development?
absolutely. And just one thing based on what you said is, yeah, the only, I think the only dev that I know that didn't have a good personality and was successful anyway was Linus Torvald, but he's like one of the brightest minds of the industry. Uh, but that's the only one who can only work alone, and it's insane. But for the rest of us mortals, that we have to have great personalities and way to communicate with other devs. I think specifically for our industry, and at least every time we hire devs for Evers, for me it's really important not only to, like you said, learn about how the different formats work, how USD works, how GLTF works, how under the hood, what are the differences, and or someone creates a new format and they're promising it's a great format. Go ahead, download the repo and see what are the differences, and see how robust it is, because it might be a great idea, but then if you compare it to a format that is extremely robust, might not be a really good idea. So that's a great advice. Also, learning about how geometry engines work, how kernels work. That this is a reality.
Mm.
Most software either work with meshes or with mathematical equations describing objects. Those are the most common ones. So you need to understand both of them, and see how a mesh works, how triangle, vertices, normals, all that. It's really important because for us, at least, every time we hire a dev who doesn't have experience exposed or exposure to coding on 3D, they cannot code anything. They're like, I don't understand a thing. They cannot even code how to draw a line. For us that comes from the industry and have been exposed to that forever, it's easier.
That's a
Yeah,
good point. I take that for granted. And yeah, it took a long time for me to learn about the 3D concepts, and there was a lot
yeah.
of things to learn,
How
definitely.
lighting works, how
Yeah.
cameras work, how it's
What a cross product of a vector
huge.
is and how it represents, how do you compute normals? Those are, yeah,
UVs,
yeah,
how
yeah,
to
those are some
map
really important
textures
things.
into a face.
Or just, yeah, yeah, that's tricky stuff.
Me-
And that is important, yeah. So in the AC space, yeah, I forget the breadth of graphics programming is quite big, and learning about that. And one way to get a knowledge about that would be to do a little bit of games programming. I would recommend that somebody who is going, like, let's say you're self-taught, break out Unity or Unreal and do some programming there, have
or
some
Godot,
fun, and you will
or
see again,
Godot is
Godot.
really good
Aha.
too.
Or if you're into Rust, you could use Bevy.
True, true.
Or when Era 3D Studio comes out, you could go try and using Era 3D Studio.
Absolutely.
It'll be free too. Much easier to use in Unity.
For sure, and it has been created exclusively for the AC, so more
Yeah, yeah,
specific.
really focused on AAC models.
but
Yeah,
but yeah,
but it's basically a game.
it's really important to learn about how to deal with 3D, and also another thing that people don't really understand that much, and it's coming. It's also data. We manage huge beam models are huge databases, and you need to understand the different
Yeah,
type of databases like SQL, non-SQL, one to use one, the other, use data lakes. Like it's huge, and typically
it
devs
is. It is. And
don't
having a
know a lot about it.
fundamental understanding of relational databases is the start. If you do not understand how to, do a join query on a relational database, that's something fundamental. Again, formal education, you do these things. You do operating systems, you do software architecture, you do compilers, you do databases, you do all of the fundamentals, algorithmic complexity, software engineering. So you have all of these things that you need, and we've covered them today.
Yeah, or
But yeah, computer graphics, key thing for
yeah,
our workspace, but and
and
data,
database
data,
data
database.
structures and databases, like great graph databases, like nobody's using them,
Oh
and
yeah,
it's
yeah. Well, that's an advanced
yeah.
topic in my mind. Like I think some people like kind of like they touch on one thing, they're like, hey, that's cool, and they kind of have like this light knowledge here, but they don't understand some of the other things, of all of the different options that are available to them. So you really need to have a breadth of knowledge. Like becoming too narrow too early is kind of like the death knell of for some
Yeah,
people.
and just one last thing that I think it's key It's
Yes.
having fun and experimenting. Like just do things for the sake
Yeah.
of just do it. It doesn't make sense to connect, I don't know,
I
Revit with, I don't know, HubSpot, whatever. Like, who cares? Just do things for the sake of experimenting and having fun. You're gonna learn a lot.
Yep. Oh, I agree. 100%. That's it. You gotta do that.
Yeah. Hackathons.
I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
fly, my
All
friend.
right. Yeah. Leave you to it, Chris. Thanks so much for your time, and thanks for everybody to listen to us for 40 minutes. It was really fun, and we hope to be here in a couple of weeks again. All right.